as if it wasn't obvious in that moment. Like I never got to just say, I don't think I ever articulated the words thank you to each of you for being there in that moment for me, because it was a really hard time. But yeah, it was such a blessing too. Like I remember going to bed that night just feeling really happy and smiling in this like weird paradoxical way. Like, wow, this life is hard and awful right now, but at least these two people are there for me. And that was just super meaningful.
1 year ago, my life hit the biggest question mark, the biggest cliff I'd ever faced in 3 decades. A community and a home, a brotherhood that I'd built, that I thought was strong, that would last forever, fell out from under me. I moved out, got my own studio apartment, and started living alone for the first time in years, for the sake of my spiritual health above all else. I went to bed crying some nights, most nights, if I could even fall asleep. I wondered if the last 2.5 years of my life had been for nothing, a waste of time for me and a waste of time for others. I seriously wondered, if my grandiose visions for brotherhood and belonging were foolish, an impossible dream. I wondered if I could ever love again, if I could ever trust again. And furthermore, if I was even worthy of being loved or being trusted. I struggled with my own self-worth and my own abilities to be in relationship, to be in healthy, strong, intimate friendship with another man. Because when the ground falls out from beneath you, how on earth do you stand again? In Donald Miller's book, Scary Close, he charts his journey with intimacy. And near the beginning of the book, he talks about his engagement that ultimately fell apart, a relationship that needed to end, and a conversation that he had with his good friend Bob. "Don," Bob said, "I think this is over." I had an office above a Thai restaurant on 23rd at the time. I leaned back in my chair with my feet on the windowsill. I thumbed through a pile of mail I hadn't looked at in weeks. He said it again. He said he thought the relationship was over, and I needed to acknowledge the fact. I knew he was right. It had been over for months. "Do you want me to get on a plane and help you tell her?" he asked sadly. "No," I said. "I can do it." So I did. It sounds trivial now. Millions of couples break off engagements, and nearly all of them are better off because of it. But when you're in it, when you say all those words and don't mean them a couple months later, you feel like a fool. You wonder if your words have power anymore. And what is a man if his words are weakened? Add to this the sadness, the confusing grief involved in hurting somebody, and the forced realization there's something in you so unhealthy and careless it could level a heart. My season of sadness lasted nearly a year, and once again it was Bob who helped me through it. One afternoon when I was back in my office trying to write, Bob called again. He asked how I was, and I told him I would be fine. He asked how I was healing, and I told him I was healing fine. Of course, none of that was true. I wasn't fine at all. I was numb. I kept a bottle of whiskey behind a Bible on the bookshelf, and when everybody went home, I'd have 3 drinks and listen to music as a way of trying to feel something. "You don't sound fine," Bob said. I'd have argued with him, but I was afraid he'd notice I was slurring my words. "You know what I've noticed about you, Don?" Bob said. "What's that, Bob?" "I've noticed you're good at relationships." I said nothing. I wasn't sure I understood him correctly. Then he said it again, right into the silence of the phone. "You're good at relationships, Don," he repeated. The truth is, I hadn't cried since I'd broken off the engagement. Like I said, I'd gone numb. But as he said those absurd words, something in me began to feel again, and all the pain of the season swelled up. I pulled the phone from my ear, dropped my head on the desk, and wept. And as I cried, Bob kept repeating, "Don, you're good at relationships. You're still good at them. You've always been good at them. For the next few months, there was a yawning chasm between Bob's affirmation and the way I felt about myself. But he kept calling, and every time he'd call, he'd say it again. You know, Don, you're terrific at relationships. Remember that time you encouraged me? Remember that kid you and I met in Uganda and how much he loved you? Remember that girl you dated years ago who still thinks of you as a brother? We can't let our failures define us, Don. You're good at relationships, and you're only getting better. Like a trial lawyer, he argued his case into my soul, week after week, until the chasm began to close. And so, my brothers, you who have succeeded relationally, and you who have failed, you who have gained friendships, and you who have lost, you who have grown and deepened in intimacy with others, and you who have withered and still yearn. Let us release the lie that we are incompetent or undeserving of love. Let us not isolate. Let us never isolate. And let us not be fearful of this intimacy we so desperately crave, the intimacy we've been beautifully wired to need. May the God who called companionship good call us deeper into relationship with one another, sharing burdens and pain, yes, but also sharing joy. And above all, doing as Christ himself has called us to do with each and every neighbor, to love him.